Talking about things that have been growing recently, mate, Douglas Luiz's price tag. Arsenal have been sniffing. We mentioned it in the last podcast, mate, didn't you? About their, they're sort of looking to reignite their interest in Douglas Luiz. Fabrizio Romano is reporting. And like, if we're being completely honest here, mate, and fans of other teams who are going to see this video or see this on TikTok or whatever are going to laugh at us, mate. But unless you're, coming at us with £100 million, I'm sorry, but I don't think Aston Villa are going to entertain any offers. Douglas Luiz will be the next £100 million midfielder. That's just the top and bottom of it. And if we're being completely honest, mate, Arsenal don't have that kind of dough.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, actually. This one, I never really expected to go away because obviously, they tried for him a couple of seasons ago. That's when we tied him down to the new contract. And it felt like the interest was really quite concrete. It's interesting that there was a piece actually in The Athletic by Greg Evans and Jacob Tanswell a short while ago that kind of glossed over that day all the way back in, it was the start to the season before last, that we rejected, 4 offers from Arsenal in 2022. But then we also had to nervously wait for Man City as to whether or not they would activate the buyback clause in a deal that saw Douglas join Villa for 15 million. And so it was rumoured that they had a kind of buyback clause, and it seems to be insinuated from these guys at The Athletic that was correct. They even went as far as to say that Villa bought Morgan Sanson as a potential replacement. So Villa began planning for life without Douglas Luiz by buying Morgan Sanson. And when you apply that to Sanson's, Villa career or lack thereof, it makes more sense that he was signed as a replacement for a man that never left. And so Douglas has kind of spoken about this and that crazy day where Arsenal bid 4 times. And so he's kind of said that obviously it was a crazy day, but he's really put his head down. He's come on in leaps and bounds since then. And that's not always easy for a player to do. And I think that we've kind of always said that it's no boy's dream growing up on the streets of Brazil to one day play in B6. And that he kind of felt that maybe there's a career that never was at Manchester City, obviously, because he was a Manchester City player for some time, had a loan to Girona and stuff like that. There was reportedly visa issues that stopped him ever actually playing for Pep Guardiola's side. And so he probably feels that in another universe, he's a well-integrated part of that Man City squad, and he's got the talent to do that. And so I think Douglas deserves some real credit. But there probably has always been that kind of thing in the back of his mind that one day one of the big teams in England, not that he doesn't already play for one mind, but one of the really established title chasers would come back for him. And if Fabrizio's reports is anything to go by, another pursuit might not be too far away.
Should we be worried about this, mate? Should we be worried? Because as I've alluded to, I genuinely think it will cost. We're looking at around £100 million because let's take a look at midfielders who have moved in the summer, right? Declan Rice, 106 million. Moises Caicedo, 115 million. Enzo Fernandez before, 115 million. Jude Bellingham, 80 million. But you've not got Prem tax there. Realistically, if a Liverpool or City or United was to get Bellingham, they would have probably paid £120 million. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that Douglas Luiz is a better player than Jude Bellingham, but I think I would say he's better or as good as Declan Rice, Moises Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez. Somebody who's proven in the Premier League, comes with a reputation, obviously, clearly somebody who Pep Guardiola and Manchester City admired from a young age to have signed him and to have gone through the troubles of trying to obtain a work permit for him. I don't see a world where Arsenal pay that much money right after paying all that for Declan Rice and supposedly with Ivan Toney being on their radar in January as well. I know Chelsea bought Enzo for 100 million in January, but Chelsea are just an enigma. I don't think these big money transfers happen in January. I think these are things that take time. These are things that will probably happen in the summer. if they are going to happen. So should we have cause for concern here?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think, look, like, we kind of have to accept that when in football, sometimes there are things that I think the way that we kind of look at transfers is really kind of changing. And you see this kind of at the elite level, whereby just because a player kind of wants to go to another club doesn't necessarily mean that they want to leave the one that they're at.
Yeah.
And I saw some really interesting comments from Ilkay Gundogan, who obviously completed his recent move to Barcelona from Manchester City. And he was like, obviously, I didn't want to leave Manchester City, but I really wanted to play for Barcelona. And so you kind of see this thing whereby, just because a kind of player, of course, like, if Manchester City came in for someone like Douglas Luiz, of course, like, he would want to go and try that. Who wouldn't? Unless you're even I was about to say, unless you're a born and bred Villa fan who would want to make that switch, but one very recently did. And so, that pull can outweigh anything, even the most loyal of Villa fans, as Jack once was. Like, if the money is on the table, players all, and Villa are happy with the demands. It's important to say that Villa aren't, and neither should we. Like, Villa will, every player has their price. Douglas Luiz is incredibly valuable for this squad, but if, as you say, £100 million is put on the table, then there's not many players in world football that you can't get for that kind of money. And so Douglas Luiz will have a price, and whilst I would be desperate to keep on to him, and I'd never want to see him go, and it would be painful to see him go to another club, particularly in the Premier League. Like, I think if this was, as I said, Barcelona or Real Madrid sniffing around him, you kind of be like, well, I mean, every player, like, those are the moves that they dream of, and so you'd never want to stand in their way. But this will be really interesting. Apparently, Villa are really keen to hold on to him. For Arsenal and the kind of role that I think Douglas would play in their squad, I would go as far as to say maybe it doesn't make sense to spend that much unless they see Douglas coming in and being a nailed-on starter in that 11. I've seen them links with players like Zubimendi at Real Sociedad, which I think would come in at far, far lower fee, even though, he's an exceptional footballer. You're not going to have to spare £100 million or near that to get him out of Sociedad. It probably doesn't make sense to spend that much. And you kind of saw that last summer with their decision to go with someone like Trossard over someone like Mudryk.
Yeah.
In that they just knew the better value was out there for the role that Trossard was going to play in the squad, and it's worked out really nicely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think where I stand on it is obviously I think he's worth £100 million, but I don't think he's worth £100 million to Arsenal, to City, to any of these clubs. I don't see anyone paying that much, but I think that's how much we demand. And especially, and the thing is as well, I'm not going to sit here and, some people are maybe going to take this the wrong way. We're not willing him away. We want Douglas Luiz to stay at Aston Villa Football Club forever. He is literally our best player. There is no doubting. Douglas Luiz is Aston Villa's best and most important player right now. But objectively looking at it, if you can get £100 million for somebody that you signed for £15 million, which is crazy to say, there'll be people higher up that will seriously consider that. And I think we've seen the wiggle room that we've been allowed to give ourselves by selling Cam, by selling Jadon, by selling Aaron. There isn't that wiggle room now. We're still in the green on financial fair play, yes, but when we're looking at sellable assets from the academy, there's nobody that right now you could demand a fee like we did for Cam or like we did for Aaron. I know Jadon's was a bit less, but every little helps. Not sponsored by Tesco. But yeah, it's like we don't, like, the only way we're going to be able to keep ourselves in the green and allow us to spend is by selling somebody like Douglas.
Well, mate, like, it kind of comes back to, it would break my heart to see Douglas Luiz go, man. But if we'd sell Jack for 100 million, we'd sell Douglas for 100 million.
Exactly.
That's the reality. Jack was Aston Villa. He was everything that was good about the club at that time. He was our only hope. Like, it was Jack Grealish or nothing. Like, everything went through him. Everything went down. He was our system in so many ways. And so if we were open to selling him for that fee, then we'd be open to selling anybody. Almost any club in world football would be open to selling any player if £100 million is put on the table. Like, there are only maybe you could name 5-10 footballers maybe in the world, maybe not even that come outside of that price tag. And so we have to be kind of realistic in the simple economics and the simple profit margins of buying a player for 15 and flipping him for 100 million. Whilst it would absolutely devastate me. I really don't want to see him go, but that is the kind of worry nowadays in the money in the Premier League, is that clubs do have the capacity to stump up that. And I don't think Arsenal will sign him. I really don't. Fabrizio said it will be hard to, like, his exact quote was, I'll pull it up now, in that he seemed to feel that it would be difficult for Villa to hold on to him by the kind of nature of his post. And so he said, yes, understand Douglas Luiz remains the favourite option at Arsenal's list. At this time, Arsenal love him, but ambitious Aston Villa want to keep Douglas. Not easy. This would mean that they would drop near enough 200 million on central midfielders in one season. And unless you're Al Hilal, I just don't see how that's sustainable.
No, it's not, mate. It's not. I think we've got another season. I think, depending on how this goes, this whole Europa Conference League, Premier League, top 5, top 6 race, I think if we fall short of the Champions League, which is, highly likely, like, I'm not saying we're going to get Champions League at all.
Yes.
But if we fall short, but we make a really good effort of it, fall into the Europa League, we'll have a situation like Brighton with McAllister and Caicedo and guys like that who do end up leaving for the bigger, more established European achieving clubs. But I don't think we could complain, really. Like,
No, absolutely.
We're in 2023 now. Douglas Luiz signed for Aston Villa in July of 2019. And as I say, £15 million. We get another season and a half out of Douglas Luiz and then sell him for £100 million. Then Aston Villa is being run by some pretty competent people, I think I'd say. And I'd trust Unai to find a replacement for a fraction of the price. Like, look at Moreno. Everybody was like, who's this guy? We were like, who's this guy? And he's come in, and I know he's injured right now, but I think it's fair to say that Unai's eye for talent is unrivaled, and Monchi knows what he's doing. So, yeah, and again, like, just to reiterate to all the listeners, this isn't us wanting to sell Douglas Luiz. Again, if we were to pull out a lifetime contract right now, make him sign it, it'd be the happiest I've ever been. But sometimes we have to take off the claret and blue tinted spectacles and try and view these things objectively. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, great servant, what a player. Let's just enjoy him because he's fantastic. And I'm sure there'll be plenty more noise, but realistically, Arsenal ain't paying 100 million quid. So I don't think we have too much to worry about.